happened? Oh my God, it's clotted. Oh, God.
He smiled, knowing he'd found his team, asking if they could truly transform him. He was just so thrilled. In 1993, a comedy arrived that brought both laughter and tears to families everywhere. It felt like home. Mrs. Doubtfire became a 90s classic. Yet, the true story behind the scenes was even more incredible and wild. Rather than following the script, Robin Williams chose to let his imagination run wild, with endless, brilliant improvisation. The crew actually filmed nearly 2 million feet of celluloid just to keep up with his rapid-fire jokes. We all remember that iconic melting cake mishap. A lucky accident that Robin instantly turned into legendary comedy gold. However, that was merely the start, as the film holds many more secrets than most fans ever realized. Today, we explore 15 unbelievable facts about Mrs. Doubtfire. Starting with the sheer explosion of humor on set, Robin poured his heart into every single scene, while the cameras never stopped rolling on his lightning-fast genius. They burned through nearly 2 million feet of film, a staggering amount for any movie in the early 90s. This was quite the gamble back then, as physical film was expensive, and every extra take cost money. Still, with Williams lost in his character, it was simply impossible for the director to ever look away. He would start by delivering several takes exactly as written, showing his sharp and professional side as an actor. Once the director had a safe version, he finally gave Robin the freedom to explore his own ideas. Instead of repeating himself, Robin invented fresh jokes and funny voices for every single take they recorded. Columbus used 4 cameras to catch Robin's erratic brilliance and the genuine, shocked laughter of the entire cast. Certain scenes required over 20 takes, not due to errors, but because Robin's creativity simply would not stop. He pushed himself relentlessly until every funny thought in his mind was finally captured on the screen. He joked about his past work in a band named after car trouble, leaving his interviewer quite puzzled. He asked if the kids were well-behaved or if they needed a bit of a rough-and-tumble lesson. The set felt less like a movie studio and more like a front-row seat to a live performance. Meanwhile, the script supervisor faced the daunting task of manually documenting every single one of his unscripted lines. They scribbled frantically as Williams used the written script as a mere launching pad for his spontaneous wit. There was enough footage for 3 distinct versions, ranging from family-friendly to a much more adult Ed Gear cut. Those unseen moments are now tucked away in climate-controlled vaults. Fact 14 brings us to a famous mishap. That melting mask was a total accident that became legendary. The face icing scene remains one of our favorites. The way the frosting slowly began to slide off her face was something the production never actually intended. The script only called for Daniel to hide his face in a cake because he lacked his mask. When the visitor arrived unexpectedly, the intense heat of the studio lights began to liquefy the sugary disguise. The icing began melting much faster than expected. A voice called out that the tea water was ready. With a cheerful hello, the disguise slid away, turning a quick fix into a truly hilarious cinematic disaster. Then came a moment no writer could plan when a blob of icing fell right into the guest's tea. While others might have stopped, Robin stayed in character and offered a quick, witty remark about the situation. He told her she had her cream and sugar now, offering it with a gentle, grandmotherly smile. He joked about it being a little cappuccino, asking if she wanted 1 drop of cream or 2. He even asked if she wanted another, a line that was never written or practiced before the cameras. It was pure improvisation. and thankfully the director never stopped the film, preserving that iconic moment forever. That lucky save became a highly quoted piece of movie history. Number 13 takes us into the streets. Robin actually took the character out into public, and remarkably, not a single person realized it was him. On his days off, he would walk through the city in full costume to test the disguise's realism. The makeup was so convincing that even his son didn't know him until his true voice finally emerged. He even visited an adult boutique while fully dressed as the elderly nanny, pushing the joke even further, wearing the wig and glasses. He tried to buy a scandalous toy he later joked about with friends. The clerk had no idea they were helping a Hollywood legend and simply treated him like any customer. It was only after he dropped the character's voice that the shopkeeper realized the prank and laughed. Number 12. Little Lisa Jakub was actually forced out of school just for starring in this classic film. Bringing Lydia to life came with a painful cost for young Lisa Jakub, the ninth grader who landed that career-defining role. At only 14, she studied with tutors on set and mailed her assignments back home from those sunny California studios. She poured her heart into balancing the glitz of Hollywood with the heavy stack of her daily homework. But the administrators back home in Canada didn't quite see her magical journey in the same light, despite being away for a massive production. A letter arrived stating she was barred for missing too many school days. The rules were set in stone, leaving a young girl wondering why her world was being turned upside down. It felt so incredibly unfair to her. This sudden rejection left the young actress feeling absolutely crushed and alone. When Robin Williams heard, he wrote a soulful letter to the principal, pleading for them to reconsider her future. The principal refused and allegedly framed Robin's letter as a trophy on his office wall instead of showing mercy. Lisa never returned to that school, later sharing the deep ache of losing her simple, precious teenage life. Number 11. A true titan from the golden age of Looney Tunes directed that whimsical opening animation sequence. That first scene of Mrs. Doubtfire was crafted by the steady hand of one of history's most celebrated animators. Those colorful antics of Pudgy the parakeet and Grunge the cat were the handiwork of the legendary Chuck Jones. He was the creative soul who gave us icons like Bugs Bunny and the frantic, fast-paced Roadrunner. Director Chris Columbus wanted a creative opening that felt like a warm, nostalgic hug from our shared childhood memories. It was a brief moment of pure, playful reflection, but the legendary Chuck Jones didn't embark on this animated adventure by himself. He gathered an elite squad of artists, including old masters like Tom Ray and the brilliant newcomer Eric Goldberg, while animating the genie in Aladdin. Eric helped create nearly 5 minutes of vibrant, fun cartoon footage for Robin. Sadly, most of that footage was cut, though it lives on today as a hidden treasure for dedicated fans. That short animated intro was a masterclass in showing us exactly who the character of Daniel really was. In the story, Daniel quits because he refuses to let a cartoon bird promote smoking habits to young children. It perfectly painted the picture of a man with a solid heart but a very messy way of living. Number 10. Transforming into that famous nanny was a grueling 4-hour test of daily endurance for Robin Williams. Every single morning began with a 4 to 4.5 hour journey sitting inside the intensive makeup chair. It required 8 distinct foam latex pieces, fit together with the precision of a very delicate, intricate puzzle. Once the face was set, the layers of heavy bodysuit padding began to take their final shape. Then came the wig and fine layers of paint to create those authentic, aged skin textures we remember. For hours, Robin sat perfectly still, head tilted back, as the artist worked with the focus of master sculptors to help him endure the weight. The crew mounted a television on the ceiling so he could watch movies. That visionary makeup crew worked tirelessly to make every wrinkle and expression feel completely and truly genuine. Their incredible artistry was finally honored when they won the Oscar for Best Makeup in 1994. It was a constant battle, as Robin's energy led to heavy sweating that threatened to dissolve the prosthetic seams. If those seals weren't perfect, the hot studio lights would cause the entire illusion to melt away quite quickly. Robin joked that wearing the full ensemble felt like being stuck inside the world's most oversized rubber suit. When the temperature rose, the makeup would soften, turning each day into a frantic race against the ticking clock. Number 9. The heartfelt ending we all love was almost replaced by something far more artificial and hollow. Those poignant closing moments that touched so many lives were nearly lost to the whims of the studio executives. Screenwriter Randy Mayhem Singer originally envisioned a grounded finale where the parents stayed apart but co-parented with love. However, 20th Century Fox pushed for a classic Hollywood miracle, where the family suddenly and magically reunites. They wanted a simple storybook ending, even if it meant sacrificing the difficult truth of the story. But that shallow resolution didn't sit right with the people who were pouring their souls into the film. Since the director and cast had lived through real divorces, they felt a responsibility not to give kids false hope. They didn't want to suggest parents just get back together. And Robin fought hard to keep that honesty alive. Think of a love so deep it defines you, only to be told you're forbidden from seeing those you cherish. Losing that daily connection feels like losing the very air you breathe, leaving you gasping for a way to survive. He simply couldn't live without them. Yet the studio hired a new writer to give the movie a safer ending. They wanted a conventional finish, but the director and stars refused to let the story's true heart be sold out. Restoring the original vision gave the film a message that was far more powerful than any traditional happy ending ever could. It showed that while families change and relationships evolve, love remains a constant, even after a difficult divorce ends. That final scene where she speaks to children about different kinds of families is a moment that still brings tears today. It exists because the creative team chose emotional honesty over a perfect finish, leaving us with a story that feels real. At number 8, Pierce Brosnan's character was originally meant to be the movie's main villain. Stu Dunmire wasn't just a rival for Miranda. He was crafted to be a bad guy we were all meant to hate. Early scripts showed him plotting against Daniel, even suggesting the kids be sent away to a cold boarding school. He was written as a selfish man, making him an easy villain to dislike in that classic Hollywood way. However, the director soon realized that this black and white approach felt far too simple and somewhat cartoony. This wasn't a movie about defeating a villain, but about a flawed father facing the music of his own choices. By focusing on his own consequences, the film gained a depth that a simple bad guy would have surely ruined. Rewriting the character saved the film's heart, turning a flat antagonist into something far more interesting and human instead of a manipulator. Stu became a kind and patient man who was genuinely good with the children. He became the composed opposite to Daniel's chaos, creating a contrast that makes us nostalgic for such great writing. This change made the story better, as Daniel's jealousy was no longer about a villain, but about his own deep insecurity. Stu wasn't stealing his family, he was just a decent man, which is a far more painful reality to face. The tension rises as Daniel watches another man step into his life, leaving us to wonder how we would cope. Interestingly, the only trace of the original villain survives in that one sharp moment by the pool, when Stu calls Daniel a loser. It's a single harsh line left over from a much darker, earlier version of the script. That dismissive comment about the children's real father being a loser hits with a coldness that feels out of place now. There was a deleted scene where Daniel actually apologizes to Stu, finally admitting that his own jealousy was the problem. It reinforced the lesson that Daniel was his own obstacle, a piece of growth that still resonates with audiences today. Coming in at number 7. Robin Williams once stopped everything so Sally Field could have the time to grieve. One of the most touching moments happened off camera, showing the deep bond shared by the people making the movie. While filming the custody scene, Sally Field learned her father had passed away, a heartbreak no one saw coming that day. Despite her sorrow, she tried to keep working, showing a level of professional strength that is truly moving to remember. But Robin sensed her pain immediately and stopped the production the moment he heard what had happened to her family. As the star, he went to the director and insisted on a break, proving his heart was as big as his talent. The schedule was changed instantly, so she could be with her family. A quiet act of kindness behind the scenes. She later described him as a deeply intuitive man who noticed the emotional shifts that most people would usually miss. He chose action over simple sympathy, creating a moment of compassion that lingers in the memories of the entire cast. That kindness left a lasting impact on everyone, just like the real person who inspired the character of Mrs. Doubtfire. The famous nanny was partially inspired by a real figure in Edinburgh whose singular charm left a very lasting impression. Her name and spirit trace back to a shopkeeper named Annabel Kotz, known to locals as Madame Doubtfire. She ran a cluttered secondhand shop full of cats and history, creating an atmosphere that felt like a different world. Author Anne Fine often walked past that shop, becoming fascinated by the woman's distinctive and unforgettable personality. That mysterious aura eventually inspired her novel, giving birth to the story that would become a cinematic classic. The book became the film's foundation, but Williams added his own memories to make the character truly come alive. He used the warmth of his own childhood nanny and a Scottish tone, creating a performance we still cherish today. The real Mrs. Doubtfire finally passed away in 1979. Her legacy lives on through a character that continues to touch our hearts and remind us of home. Little did she know, her name and gentle spirit would eventually be carved into cinema history as a definitive treasure of the 1990s. At number 5, the creative team ensured Mrs. Doubtfire looked like a grandmother you could genuinely hug. Director Chris Columbus was adamant that the look shouldn't feel like a cheap comedy gag or a loud performance in drag. The mission was difficult. The children on screen and the families in the theater had to believe she was a real person. To pull off that miracle, the design crew spent countless hours poring over hundreds of vintage photographs to find a perfect face. They finally struck gold with a portrait from the 1940s, depicting an elderly woman whose eyes held a deeply comforting light. Every wrinkle and silver hair was meticulously reverse-engineered from that single, frozen moment in time, creating a remarkably convincing result. When you paired those award-winning prosthetics with the legendary spirit of Robin Williams, the character truly came to life. The magic trick was so seamless that many viewers actually forgot there was a man buried under all those heavy layers. Moving to number 4. It's wild to think the entire cast and the soul of the film could have been totally different. The novelist Anne Fine originally had her sights set on Warren Beatty to step into the shoes of the father, Daniel. Just try to picture the suave, romantic lead from Bonnie and Clyde struggling to breathe inside a heavy, awkward latex mask. That version likely would have leaned into a much darker tone. But the studio was leaning toward Tim Allen at one point. Tim Allen was the king of the sitcom world back then. And while it would have been a safe bet, something felt missing. It likely would have been funny, but might not have become the emotional classic it is. They even considered Mel Gibson and Tom Hanks. Icons like Bill Murray and Chevy Chase were also on the list, each bringing a flavor that would have fundamentally altered the movie. However, Robin Williams claimed the role, and the character transformed into something that no other human being could ever hope to replicate. He delivered a performance that was equal parts chaotic, tender, unpredictable, and most importantly, deeply human to the core. The casting for Miranda was almost different, as Columbus initially wanted Catherine O'Hara after their success together on Home Alone. Kirstie Alley was another top contender for the part, though her busy schedule ultimately kept her from joining this iconic family. In the end, Sally Field took the reins and became the steady, grounding force that the film needed to balance Robin Williams. She kept the story from flying off into pure absurdity. Even the tiny role of Natalie almost went to a future superstar. A very young Blake Lively actually auditioned for the part, but it was Mara Wilson who ultimately captured our hearts forever. At number 3, we look at the sequel that almost was, haunting the halls of Hollywood for more than a decade. But every attempt seemed to fail. The first real effort gained steam in 2001 when Bonnie Hunt was hired. By 2006, the momentum had died out, and Williams himself confessed that the new story just wasn't working. Neither Williams nor Chris Columbus were willing to tarnish the original's legacy by forcing a story that didn't have a heartbeat. Since Daniel's secret was already out in the open by the first film's credits, the emotional journey felt naturally finished. When the children finally realized it was their father, repeating the whole disguise gimmick just felt entirely unnecessary and hollow. The idea sat in development hell until 2014, when a fresh script finally gave the duo a reason to believe again. Robin had one simple, human request for his return. He didn't want to spend those grueling hours in the makeup chair anymore. The prosthetic process was a physical marathon, and he was older. Then, in the summer of 2014, he tragically passed away. This happened before the cameras could ever roll, and the sequel was buried forever alongside its legendary, irreplaceable star. Coming in at number 2, the film's messy custody battle actually opened the door for very raw conversations about fathers' rights. While it didn't inspire men to wear floral dresses, it spoke to the heartbreak of fathers who felt sidelined in legal battles. Daniel is shown as a man whose only real crime is being a bit immature. Yet, he loses his world while unemployed. He was living in an unstable environment. And the judge notes how the legal system has historically leaned heavily toward mothers. Watching the court hand full custody over to the mother is a moment that still feels like a quiet, painful gut punch. Back in 1993, that one specific line resonated with a profound, aching truth for many parents in the audience. Since then, legal experts and family attorneys have used the film as a point of reference and a reflection of true frustration. It's frequently cited as a textbook example of what to avoid during a split, as deception is usually a recipe for disaster. Daniel's desperation felt incredibly authentic. He wasn't a villain, just a flawed and reckless man who loved his kids more than rules. That emotional pull spoke to fathers who felt the scales of justice weren't always balanced when it came to their children. Ultimately, the movie became a cultural bridge, shedding light on the messy layers of divorce while giving a spotlight to fatherhood. It did all that while wrapped in the warmth of laughter, heavy latex, and that unforgettable Scottish charm we still miss today. Several tender sequences were sadly left behind. Doubtfire nearly carried a much heavier emotional burden than the version we ultimately saw in theaters. These lost dramatic sequences explored the stinging grief of divorce, capturing a family's very messy and quiet heartbreak. These glimpses were removed to ensure the story stayed energetic, hilarious, and universally relatable. Another forgotten chapter featured Daniel finally confronting the green-eyed monster that was eating away at his heart. He offers an apology to Stu, the incredibly kind and patient new man in Miranda's world. This specific beat would have grounded the entire film, showing a father truly reflecting on his own difficult mistakes. He was finally realizing where he had gone wrong. But that scene was sadly left out of the movie. It would have offered a richer perspective on Daniel, showing a soul far deeper than just a frantic father in disguise. We witnessed a man desperately trying to mend his spirit, acknowledging that the charming Stu was never actually the source of his troubles. He was fighting his own inner nature. If you truly loved this cinematic trip down memory lane, please hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another story. Do you have any special movie requests for our channel? Share them in the comments below. I appreciate you watching, and I will see you in the next one.